Welcome to Straight Talk for our 29th and final episode for this year's series. This year's only. We'll be back. The results are in though, and the dust has settled. We have a new Prime Minister, so let's analyse the outcome. Firstly though, let's introduce the panel for tonight. Another handsome lot. And firstly, we go to Christchurch. Gee, we got three in Christchurch. Okay, Bruce, firstly, how are you, Bruce?
Fine, thank you. Excellent.
Now, somebody said that you'd had a bit of a fall, had you? Trying to rescue a tree, doing your bit for the environment.
Well, it got very windy. It got very windy here one day and we had a tree fall down close. However, I've recovered.
Okay, that's good. That fit body of yours. To your left is Dr. Michael Reid. How are you, Michael?
G'day, Bob. Good evening, everyone. I'm good, thanks.
Okay, and back after a bit of a break is from Masterton, Sue Reid. How are you?
Kia ora, Bob. Yes, good to be on the other side.
Okay, and interesting result from Wairarapa is a change in your local MP, wasn't it?
Very surprising. I should put more hope in the people of the Wairarapa, put more faith in the people of the Wairarapa. Yep, flip back to blue.
Flip back to blue, okay. And still in Christchurch is Brendan Malone. How are you, Brendan?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks, Bob. It's actually Rangiora, though, but I'll forgive you.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting that. That's like saying that we're from Australia, eh?
That's exactly right. That's how obscene that statement is.
Yeah, okay. And finally, Christine and Taupo. How are you, Christine?
Good evening, Bob and everyone. I'm great this week.
And you are great this week, yeah, because last week, what was it? You had was it a headache or something, eh?
Yeah, I'm having problems with headaches, so any prayers are appreciated.
Okay, and people, you can comment on our Facebook page, Family First NZ, if you want to ask the panel a question. You're welcome to do that, and also on YouTube, you can put your comments as well. Okay, image of the day. Well, I think there's no mistaking that this is kind of the image from the weekend. One a victor and one not a victor. So quite a contrast in fortunes, wasn't it? But also another image. And I want to acknowledge National MP Simon O'Connor, who lost his seat after a hit job by the ACT Party on his electorate, primarily because he was upfront and honest about his pro-life, anti-euthanasia, pro-Israel and pro-free speech views. And, of course, the legacy media joined the campaign against him. The left-wing news site Newsroom had a totally unbalanced hit piece on him in the week leading up to the election. And it's because the media hated his pro-life expression of support for the repealing of Roe v. Wade. How dare he celebrate the rights of the unborn child? But it says a lot about the ACT Party that they targeted a national seat after the favours done to ACT by National over many previous elections in Epsom. But to Simon, we wish him well. He has always been one of the good ones in Parliament. Video of the week, team, is probably the best and most concise reason why Labour lost the election in spectacular fashion. And it came from Senior Minister and Labour Party campaign chair Megan Woods, who summed it up in 3 seconds. Have a listen to this concise political commentary as to why Labour lost the election.
What went wrong is that we didn't get enough votes.
Brilliant. Did you hear that? Let me run past that analysis again.
What went wrong is that we didn't get enough votes.
So that's what you guys need to do if you want to become real political commentators. Right, now we have a couple of letters, couple of bits of feedback. Firstly from Richard, he says, love your work, not a Christian, but share a lot of your values. Just a little advice on the use of the earbuds that I have seen you using in some of your presentations. RF has been proven to damage the human body cells, particularly neurological cells, and the buds that you are using transmit RF directly through the brain to communicate with each other, effectively frying your brain cells between them. You may be frying what few brain cells you have left. All the best and continue with the work that you do. So that was lovely, wasn't it? That's why I only wear one, so that basically goes through the vacant space and then just bounces back straight again. And one other.
Well, Bob, we didn't want to say that there had been a degradation over the entire season, right, from start to end. I don't want to say anything, all right, but
Dear Straight Talk, I was watching last week and I can't believe that you all think that conscience votes are better than the democratic will of the people through referenda. The cost is irrelevant. Think of the cost to the fabric of society when we get things wrong, such as undermining parents and discipline, attempts to legalise drugs, redefining marriage, legalising prostitution, and many others. We know that once politicians get drunk on power, they ignore written submissions and oral submissions. Remember the farce of the debates on abortion, conversion therapy, birth certificates. I hope you will all rethink your attitudes and agree with Bob's considered comments. By the way, great work on Straight Talk. I haven't missed a single episode. Signed, Robert McCoskrie. So,
well done, Robert.
Well, I just want to ask Sue and Christine, because they weren't here last week, and we had a bit of a doozy about whether we should stick with conscience votes and allow politicians to decide the moral fabric or put it to referendum of the people. And I was severely outvoted, and the counselling has helped. But I'd like to ask Sue and Christine what you think. Sue, what do you think of referenda versus conscience votes?
Absolutely, I'm in favour of referenda. It is the purest form of democracy. You put an issue out there, but more to the point, it slows down the speed of a law change. So it isn't just mere numbers that we have in our MMP system at the moment, which frustrates me. You can have things go to select committee, but it always comes back to a numbers game in MMP. By having referenda, and you can do it, in a way that you put 2 or 3. We are smart people. We are smart in the public. Put 2 or 3 questions out there, and have the people have their say. It is the purest form, most basic, I guess, of democracy. And it is really important to slow. We don't want to rush laws. We end up with really messy laws when we rush it, and we've got many, many examples of that in our statutory books now. So I'm a great supporter of referenda, and I'm also a great supporter of letting your MPs have their conscience vote.
Okay, well, those were excellent comments. Christine, what do you think?
Oh, look, I totally agree. I believe in referendum, absolutely. And I think that there is a cost-effective way to do it. As Sue said, you can do several topics at once. What the people want is the true democracy. And yes, I know you elect someone to represent you, but it is never the same as consulting the people individually and giving them an opportunity to vote. I think it's very powerful, and it certainly should be done for the major processes or the major things that we would usually look to a conscience vote for, because people like us are never going to be represented by that conscience vote. It's just not going to happen. I believe we do need to be individual.
Thank you, ladies. Brendan, do you want to change your vote?
Bob, no. As much as I feel like the rose between two thorns, I'll say, no, did I get that around the wrong way? Sorry, ladies. No, I'm not going to change my vote.
Between two roses.
As much as there's 2 lovely ladies either side of me, I can't change my vote.
Bruce, have you been persuaded?
No, not really.
Okay. Michael?
Oh, well, Bob,
good on you, Mike.
I don't want to sound too equivocating, but I think they are mass. I'm just thinking logistically. I mean, principle, yes, it is perhaps the purest form of democracy, but they're massively expensive, and I know that money's spent on all sorts of things. I think the questions have to be really carefully framed, and sometimes they can be very skewed. So there would have to be, who sets those questions? Do politicians do it? Did the Electoral Commission do it? What's the ideological influence likely to be? Because you can skew the question to get a particular answer. And I just think there are some fishhooks there. But I agree. I think, rather than have politicians decide, particularly on moral issues, it's good to go back to the people. But, notwithstanding those concerns.
Yeah.
Bob,
okay.
Can I say, look, that the first recorded incidence of a referendum that we have in history is probably when Barabbas and Jesus stood beside each other, and we didn't get the result we wanted there. So I'm not convinced.
Okay. Yeah, very good point. Well, I figured out that it's 3 each. It's 3 each, and I have the casting vote as chairman. So sorry, guys, it's referendum.
Referendum all the way.
Brilliant.
Now, just want to look at polling accuracy just before I come around and get your response to what happened on Saturday. Just having a look at the polls. Actually, what you find is that the polls, so down the bottom line is the average of all the polls, and you'll find that National did slightly better than what was predicted, and the Greens did slightly worse, but Labour, ACT, and Te Pāti Māori and New Zealand First and Top are almost bang on. So I was keen just to show that, because often a lot of people say, well, the polls just aren't that accurate. How can you rely on them? I didn't get rung. How many people do they interview? It's only 1,000 people. But actually they were quite strong. Just before I do get feedback from you all, I just want to know which TV channel you watched the coverage on and why. Christine, which channel?
Oh, 3 all the way. I just could not cope with one at all. Look, it's just a corrupt system. And 3 hadn't been great leading up to it either. I don't think it was balanced at all. But on their night, I found it very balanced, maybe because what I wanted happened. So, it was going along the right road, but 1 was just appalling.
Okay.
Embarrassing.
Brendan, were you watching it on TV on Saturday night?
No, well, two reasons. I didn't tune into any of the stations. One was because I was actually a guest for an hour or so on a live stream that was actually doing a review of the results coming in. But also, I wanted to actually just get the results with totally unfiltered, without a whole lot of annoying opinions and frustration. So I was flicking between the Herald and Stuff, and to check the updates there.
Okay. Sue, what did you? Oh, Sue was working. So what? You were listening on the radio, were you?
I had TV3 on mute and ZB on radio for my wise analysis.
Okay, Michael, were you watching it on TV?
I was watching Sky Sport.
Oh, well, there you go. There's your priorities.
I know. I like the others. I switched between TV1 and TV3, but I loved continuing to exercise my democratic right and hit the mute button. Some of the graphics were quite good, but the commentary is pretty pathetic, as others have said. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bruce, which channel was your preference?
Well, I swapped. I don't know which channel I preferred, but I swapped from time to time. When something annoyed me, I just went to the other, or to get some, in hope for a more balanced view.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I'm sure that I got it.
Okay, well, just before we get your opinion of what happened over the weekend, I do want to give the results of the political commentator of the year, and that is on this one. So these are the predictions that each of you made for each of the parties. Now, you'll see in yellow are people who got it bang on. So, Michael, you got 1 bang on. Bruce, you got 2 bang on. I got 2 bang on. Sorry, Brendan, Christine, and Sue, you were completely off. But when we aggregated it and variance on what the result was, Michael, you came out as only a 6 variant, so you were the best of the lot. You are the political commentator of the year for Straight Talk.
Congratulations!
Congratulations! That's impressive.
Thank you, Bob. I presume the check is in the mail.
The check is in the mail, and you know what happens to checks. So, and you know what happens to mail. Let's start with you, Michael, seeing you are the expert, and your overall response to the election results and analysis. I think I've got the summary there just to remind everybody. So, National Party 39%, Labour Party 26.9%, Green Party 10.8%, ACT 9%, New Zealand First 6.5%, and Te Pāti Māori 2.6%. So, Michael, what's your overall response?
Well, Bob, I just want to say Labor didn't get enough votes. Simple as that.
Excellent summary.
No, I mean, we knew there was a mood for change, and it was going to happen. I think it was predictable. I think, the minor parties are sort of MMP is working well for them. I think you'd think Te Pāti Māori had won the American presidential election the way they were carrying on. And they were hollering and just pathetic, really. But and the Greens as well.
That was hilarious.
So the tide's out on the left. The tide is out on the left, but the right won the day, and I think it was thoroughly predictable, Bob. We knew there was a change. I don't think Chris Hipkins, particularly in those so-called leaders' debates, did himself any favours. He got particularly, defensive and quite nasty, and he was very desperate. And increasingly, Luxon looked more statesman-like. And when there's a mood for change, it's going to happen. But some surprises though, wasn't there? Really, in some electorates, but. It's what we predicted, Bob. It's what we knew was going to happen, how it all finally shakes down, and there are still some special votes and other votes to count, so there could be still a few changes. I was amazed on a Saturday how TV1 and TV3 and maybe other reporters, media sources as well, they said surprisingly little about New Zealand First. Just nothing really, or very, very little. And I still think that National and ACT would be wise and respectful to include Mr. Peters somewhere in the mix. How that all shakes down, Bob, I'm not sure, but a pretty predictable result, yeah.
Okay, Christine, I think you were the first off the blocks to sort of say there was going to be a blue NAMI, which is what they sort of termed it. Were you surprised? Did you think it should have been more, or was it about what you expected?
Well, originally it was what I originally thought it was less, but I was swayed in those last few weeks with the effect that the left might be having, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I'm glad it's over. It was the campaign that I have least enjoyed, I don't know, in the last 20 years that I can think of. I've never enjoyed one less than I enjoyed this. I think it got really nasty. And when you get to that level in politics, you take away any of the pleasure that people like me who are not obsessed but pretty close to it with what happens. I'm very, very interested. I love it. I love the dynamics of it. And this one was horrible. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we've got the result we've got. Because as I've always said, I want a group of people who can run the economy, because until the country's fixed, you can't look at the other issues. They're not even going to get a wink. So I'm glad it's happened the way it is, and I predict that Luxon will become more and more and more of a statesman. The way he spoke about his family, for example, on election night was, I would say, a truly Christian attitude and outlook, and I was proud of that. I haven't seen it in a lot of other ways. I think he's chosen a very neutral stance, and I understand that politically. I perhaps don't understand it from any other perspective, but I was really impressed with the way he has conducted himself, and I think that's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger.
You did a campaign, a full-on campaign in 2014. You were with the Conservatives who weren't popular. In the media especially. You don't think that was just as difficult as this election? You think this one was worse?
No. Yeah, I think this one was much worse. Look, they gave us a tough time in 2014, but it was sort of expected because of who we were and what we stood for. Of course, the media were going to work against us, but we did incredibly well, Bob. And those small parties need to look back at the Conservatives from 2014 and the 2 years previous to that and learn from what we did. Because had not the final nail in the coffin happened just before the election, we would have been there. And we got very, very close in a short period of time. And, Colin really needs to become a consultant for those smaller parties, because he did an incredible job with an incredible team in a short period of time. And we weren't meant to be there. Obviously, we were not meant to be, but we ran a fantastic campaign. And the more they poked at us, the stronger we got, until there was a hammer blow that took it all away, which was really sad.
Brendan, what's your overall opinion of the results?
Well, I actually think there's a couple of things stand out for me. One is I think there's no doubt in my mind that National rode on the wave of three things. Number one is people were either disenfranchised by this government. The mandates were one very clear example of that. People were either angry or they were fearful. And so, or a combination of all three. And so in that environment, you've just got to stand up and say things like, we will be tough on crime. In an environment where crime feels rampant, then people are going to go with you. So I think they benefited from that rather than Luxon and Willis being this charismatic duo. They're not really visionary in my mind. The jury's out for me, and I'm hoping it'll be a lot more solid and that he surprises us, because so far he hasn't been an aspirational leader. Willis doesn't look any better. And so, but I'm reserving judgment. And like Christine, I think Christine's hopeful that it's going to go that way. I'm hoping it will as well, and that he'll surprise. However, I think if they'd had charismatic aspirational leadership, not just very uncreative tax cut policy 4.0 or whatever we're up to now, I think they would have been sitting closer to 45%. I really do believe that. And so I think there's something in that. The other one, of course, was the ACT Party. I mean, you talk about a fall from grace. That's a real clear example of how a leader who might look like a superstar, who can, a rising tide raises all boats. Well, when that tide goes out, all the boats go down with it. And I think what's interesting now, even though you've talked about this already, they targeted Simon O'Connor. I think they've miscalculated, because I look at the national list and I see already basically Simon's effectively been replaced by at least two or three other really good pro-life candidates that have come into Parliament. And number two is Brooke Van Velden is now looking really impressive, and she really proved that she's got the ability to sway voters. And if you're ACT Party big money and you're looking to the future and you think, well, maybe there's a future leader right there. So that whole thing could be a very, very interesting future.
Okay. Sue?
Yeah, I agree with what Brendan, that's great summary there. Interesting, well, in our seat we had red turn to blue, and that I think probably what was surprising was how much that blue change happened. I lament the fact that Simon was targeted so appallingly, and let's not just blame ACT there. Paula Bennett was seen she was in Tamaki there meeting with Brooke as well. And so, I don't like it when politics turns like that. On the night, actually, to see, I think probably was the most I'd seen Christopher Luxon look relaxed, and his wife Amanda actually looks like a really great first lady. She just had energy and she felt comfortable in the front of the cameras. I guess it is that persona. We need that in politics, and we need that in our leaders. We need that I'm okay with this, and I'm there and I'm supporting this. And so she was quite sort of punchy, and she did catch my eye in that regard. In the lead up to it, I got frustrated with the debates because it was just a noise fest. We need that mic on, mic off setup where the people that that are in the middle leading it, they need to rein it in sometimes, because it doesn't make for easy listening. And you'd think that they'd learn from the first time, but no, that last one, I just had to switch it off. And like Christine, I am a political animal. I love politics. I love the nitty-gritty and the exchange of ideas. But the other thing about the campaign was that the two leaders had to rely on ideology. They had to go back to their principles of the why they are there and what they had to offer us, because there is nothing in the bank, nothing in our reserves, in our finances. There is nothing there, so they could not launch new ideas or bribe, the usual election bribes. So they had to default back to their ideology. That what was Labor going to be about? What was National going to be about? All the parties had to, were quite restrained. So you had to really rely on the ideologies. And so I think that was a bit tricky for people to understand. They were in it for, well, what's in it for me? And that often is in an election campaign. But they had to really settle for just, I guess it became boring because it was just, bread and butter politics.
Yeah.
Oh, the other
Okay.
thing I was going to say was a surprise with the Wellington seats. 2 green seats in Wellington. Wellington is where our public service is, the heartbeat of the nation. Very surprising. My husband just said to me, Labor is no longer the working people's party, they're the woking people's party.
Well, the only other red flag with that is that you've got a whole lot of people in the public service that are obviously Green voters, and that should concern all of us. That's a red flag with the Green Party. So actually just looking at those parties, I'm just trying to remember which number I want. There we are. Actually, the Green Party, the media played up that they had done fantastically because they got those 3 electorate seats, but they were polling around 14-15% just before the election. So they... actually, that was one of my predictions just before the election, was that the Green vote would tank because the Green voters didn't have the motivation of a cannabis referendum, which they had 3 years ago. So I might have been slightly proved right on that one. And also ACT, after appearing before you guys, ACT got punished and dropped from, they were polling around 14-15% as well, and they dropped down to 9%. So it's all your fault, team. And the only other one I think that we were surprised at was just New Zealand First. I think some people were thinking they might get close to 8 or 9. But anyway, Bruce, what was your overall impression?
Well, my first response, actually, the term punishment came to me. I haven't heard it used much, but I think my first response, I thought, was that the government's being punished for its arrogance and incompetence. That's a deadly combination, I thought. And I thought a little bit of relief. Are we going to have some caution? Are we going to, for example, are we going to see the end of 3 waters, co-governance, Zero Carbon Act, Climate Change Commission, Maori Health Authority, Labor's fair pay agreements, Auckland Light Rail, public service headcount reduction, and those with all those green people in Wellington? But will we see, in fact, this to me is probably the most important of all, will we see the beginning of the end of the ideology that a strong family is not made up of individuals and families, but of identity groups? The belief that the government's job is to rectify historical roles to promote diversity. We see an end to that. And another thing I'd like to see an end to, if this government has got the strength and courage to do so, is the belief that the state can, to get rid of the idea that the state can solve all our problems and it's the fount of all wisdom, as Dame Jacinda Ardern said recently, the fount of all truth. And I'd like to see some kind of belief in the nation state. It's not out of date, and human rights are not about creating and protecting group rights. I'd like to see that happening. Now, may I recommend, when I'm talking about all those things, this book here, Social Justice Fallacies. Whoops, which way do I go? Social Justice Fallacies by Thomas Sowell.
Yeah.
Outstanding book. Thomas Sowell is an American treasure. If you don't know him, you're missing a great deal. He's over 90. He's written probably 50 books. He's been translated into lots of other languages. He's written innumerable articles and so on. And if you don't know him, look him up on YouTube because he's outstandingly good. And
Did you go to school with him, Bruce?
I wish I had. Okay. And while I'm on the recommendation kick, look up Chris Trotter's piece in the Democracy Project. It's the best piece I've seen, an analysis of the election.
Okay, let's
on the way to salvation.
Okay, let's check some comments here. Firstly, here we go. Rick says, nice book. So there we are. There's a recommendation. Peas Nanny says, I know many young ones under 60 who voted New Zealand First. Leslie says, absolutely right, Bruce. They have been punished, but now we have to hold the new government to account and call them out on all the promises they made about reversing some of Labor's madness. Andrea said, Labor were in power. If they knew New Zealanders wanted change, why didn't they change their policies? But they didn't have the vision to do so. Pene says, no, National will just rebrand all these things. Were says, funnily enough, most of the hate rhetoric came from the left, I reckon. Outrageous. This is my comment of the night. This one, Aaron says, people in the least green parts of the country, Wellington and Auckland, vote green, but those in the greenest part vote blue. Ironic. That's a good quote.
True.
That's got to be the quote of the night, eh? Aaron says, we already had Aaron. We had Sunnyside Up said, Brooke didn't sway me. Aaron says, you guys might think your election was nasty. Try going through the nastiness of the voice referendum that us Aussies had just gone through. Yeah, if anybody was voting no in the voice referendum, you're a racist. Jelena says, optimistic view of Luxton, given the things he said during the last 3 years, no trust where he is concerned. Stacey said regarding Luxon and his wife, yes, it was beautiful, and how his wife spoke of him too. Also, his statement regarding Israel was great leadership. And Peter says, what figures did the minority parties get? Well, Peter, we are going to come to that shortly. Now, team, I've got a little quiz for you. I'm going to show you 2 short videos. One is from One News, where they do a short summary of election night. And then the second video is from the spin-off, where they also do a short summary of election night. Now, I want you to watch both clips, and I want you to tell me what's unique about them. There's something interesting in terms of the media coverage. Okay, so here's the quiz. For those who are watching, if you think you know the answer, then send it through, and first right answer, I'll give a Family First umbrella. Okay, so here's the first one.
I will take you straight to the wall. This is about 170,000 votes. 170,000, more than that, 200,000 votes. Do the maths. National plus ACT, that's 61 seats exactly. So it's a majority.
Clearly it's not the result we're looking for.
Let's watch very closely, but let's be aware of the fact that it is a long night.
I called Christopher Luxon to congratulate him on National's results. To my family, for everything that you have done for me.
MMP parties start to take a much larger proportion of the vote. This is what MMP was for.
We did this! I just knew that we had to go for it. I really look forward to serving the local people of Tāmaki.
It's actually a huge shift to Pāti Māori.
No mai oki mai a te, welcome back to Rotorua.
Currently, Te Pāti Māori lead 6 seats. Labour leads just 1.
And I just wanted to be the first to concede, but more importantly to congratulate you, e te tuahine.
Your work has delivered a Green Party campaign that has once again defied history.
I've long said that getting elected is not an achievement, it's an opportunity to do good.
Thank you, New Zealand, because from all over your country, this great country, you have reached for hope and you have voted for change.
Okay, so there is video number 1. So that was the first summary. Now the spin-off summary to the viewers, if you're watching and you know what the answer is, put it in the message on Facebook or on YouTube. Here we go. This is the second summary, totally different outlet, the spin-off, and this is what they said about Saturday night.
We not only have the best analysis on offer for you tonight, but we also have state-of-the-art graphics.
This is dire. This is disgusting. We've got a big blue wave coming. Look at this, boom. Look at all this blue that is coming here. Nearly the whole red wall is collapsing.
Yeah, very strong. I'm going to come to you in a second, Stuart Nash, and I'm also going to come to you in a second, Paula Bennett, but I want to show you my biscuit first.
We have had some sausage rolls come out from the press secretary. It was very much appreciated.
What are the pizzas? Yeah, actually, I didn't order them, so I can't tell you, but they'll be good.
The Labor Party's computer has crashed.
But the thing to keep an eye on is Te Pāti Māori.
Te Pāti Māori, boom, boofa.
Look at that. 6 seats at the moment. They are leading in electorates all over Aotearoa.
Yeah, nice, Jack. All over it like a rash over there. Thank you so much, Jack. A good rash. The best kind of rash. The sort of rash you want.
Wait till you see this trick. This is going to blow your mind. She's actually birthing an MP. So this is a brand new MP coming to Parliament.
Brooke Van Velden is just doing Simon O'Connor. In other words, the middle finger is being shown all over the shop, isn't it?
Hang on, wait for it. You have to start, go mountain.
Christopher Luxon is here. Christopher Luxon, how are you feeling this evening?
Oh, great. It's been a great day and a great result. So really proud of our team. I mean, we had great results and great support across the country, as I think many of you could see, and it was great to see it.
Amanda, are you proud of your husband?
I'm so proud of him. Yes.
Thanks so much.
Benedict, a bit of a sombre vibe there.
Yeah, look, they took a real beating tonight, the Labour Party, and they're not hanging around, at all.
All right, I do have a winner, but I'm interested to see if any of the panellists know the answer. Anybody want to put their hand up? Anybody know what was the interesting, significant thing amongst that all?
That TV1 was depressed at the outcome.
Possibly. Actually, they were, weren't they? I thought that was a very funny ending where they showed the broom guy going across behind the camera when the National Party was still busy celebrating, but it is pretty depressing when you're in that situation. I think the National Party packed up early last time. Yeah. Okay. No, that wasn't the thing I was looking for.
Serious
Anybody else?
unprofessionalism on spin-off with the language and the whole, delivery of results. It's kind of making it a joke.
Yep. Well, I guess they got to try and entertain us for 4 hours, eh?
Yeah.
You guys are hopeless.
When they made the move into the winners in the first one.
Okay. Well, Colin didn't get it right, but he did say this. He said, "Oh, Bob, that video is so cringy. Why are you doing this to us?" But here is the answer. In both videos, Veronica Henderson got it right. Every leader is shown. Winston was never shown. Now, the reason I want to ask you guys is, how's Winston going to cope when he hates the media hates him? Where's it going to go to from here? Brendan, you're the media guru amongst us. Is it just going to be this love-hate relationship and he actually enjoys that and we're going to love watching it?
They love him. He's a ratings boost for them, and they know it. He's their drug of choice. They cannot be without Winston, and he is absolutely. Before Trump was doing it, I think Trump modelled himself on Winston, quite frankly. And I'm just waiting for Winston to come out and, this was the best election ever, and give himself that kind of vibe, because he really has that down pat. And I think, here's the thing, like Michael said before, will they include him or not? I don't think they're going to have any choice, actually. 3 of those electorates they currently have, they're on a knife edge, even though they've won them. Like Nelson, they've only got 30 votes ahead. Another one's only 50 votes ahead. So they could actually flip seats, and I think that once the specials are counted, they may well actually need him. But I think the media, they love him. They talk about how he's this, he's that, and everything else, but they know that he sells drama, and if it bleeds, it leads. And he certainly bleeds all over the place whenever he's on TV. So, yeah, they won't be without him.
Okay, Christine, if you were doing media advice for Winston, would you just say, keep doing it, Winston?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No matter what happens, he's in a very powerful position, I believe, and he'll use it. And I think this time he's going to use it differently. They've already offered him the speaker's role, apparently. What an insult. Old people who apparently can't cope very well are given the speaker's role. He will be so insulted about that. Not a good start. He's fiery and feisty, and good on him.
So it does say something about the media, though, that they just can't bear to give him any profile. I mean, I just thought it was a mistake by One News, and then I watched the spin-off and I thought, no, actually, this is deliberate.
Yeah. Their tactic of marginalisation, this is what they do best. It's what they've done to Family First. They just muzzle anything that they don't like and put it to the side, and they know that those tactics work. Winston's been around a long time. He knows how to work this, and he knows how to get himself into those places. They will have to deal with him. They will have to go to him for commentary and all sorts of things. But this is how the media work. They just marginalise and silence you, and that's their tactic. But no, I still say that it was a bit of interesting commentary amongst friends. Winston was the protest vote that had enough of both. Whether, they're very much Winston was the protest vote, and I think they know that and they don't want to deal with it. So, no, I think, he'll hold his own. I see they were interviewing Shane Jones tonight on the news. Whether they default to interviewing more Shane Jones, don't know. So,
okay, Michael, do you think it could backfire that you get offside with the media to the extent that they actually start to put the knife in and misrepresent you, or is that already happening?
Oh, Bob, absolutely. And I think all through the campaign, Winston was the elephant in the room. I mean, we'd have the so-called debates between Luxon and Hipkins, and the post-analysis was always about what are they going to do with Winston. So just another comment really about those clips that you showed me. I mean, I'm old enough to remember people like Colin James and Keith Jackson. And these were serious political commentators. They weren't out to entertain us. Maybe millennials would see them as boring, but they were proper analysts. None of this talk about middle finger and Kiwis with lasers and, it's just nonsense, really. So I think the media have certainly not treated Winston well. And by the way, Bob, I did say that at the start, didn't I? That there was no coverage of Winston, or very, very little. I mean, the bias towards Te Pāti Māori and the Greens was palpable, and the media just loved those parties. But no, Winston was not treated respectfully, and New Zealand First was not fairly represented in in that coverage at all. But he will be a player, and especially if there's an overhang. And I think that, as I said earlier, that Christopher Luxon would be wise to be respectful and keep the door open to him, because if he doesn't, now let's remember, Bob, he was punished in 2020 for going with Labor, and he paid the price for that. But he's an absolute pit bull, really. He's a political pit bull. He knows how to come back. He was saying things that resonated with a huge swathe of the electorate, and I think he will be a player in some shape or form in the new government. Yeah,
Bruce, the problem is that the media may not respect Winston because it's pretty clear that Winston doesn't respect them. So is that a double negative, and Winston may lose out?
Well, that might be true. I don't think Winston will lose out, though. He's good copy, and for that reason, he's going to be discussed regularly. He's a grumpy sort of a fellow, and he reflects the grumpiness of his constituency because they're angry with the government, and so that supports him, that sustains him, and they're going to need him. I think the way things will spin out, Mount Albert will go red, and even the electorate that I'm in could go red, so stay red. Banks Peninsula, it's on a knife edge, and there are two others. So I think it's very likely that he will be in government. And, of course, they could always make a Minister of Broadcasting.
Yes, I'm sure the media would love that. All right.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, Bob. On that point, you talked about the clear bias against Winston. I think also there was something else going on. We saw a very unhealthy bias towards and a promotion of the top party that was totally unmerited. I looked at One News's Vote Compass website. He was the only party that had not been into Parliament previously that was actually featured as a possible choice. None of the other minor parties were. One News were promoting falsehoods that he'd claimed, 48 hours before the election. He said he'd done a sweetheart deal in his electorate, remember, with Labor and National. Again, same outfit. And the only reason to do that would be to make voters think that you could vote for this guy. They were clearly pushing him. And I think maybe they thought this guy could be our new, more tenable and socially acceptable Winston Peters if we get rid of him and replace him with this guy.
Yeah.
And just further to that, Brendan, I think Ralph Manji missed his opportunity back in the 2020 election. If he had snuggled up to National, Jerry Brownlee wasn't doing too much, and he had been the National Party candidate. He could well have held that seat, the seat of Ilam.
Yep.
It was too late. But you're absolutely right. The media seemed to love him. When they talked of minor parties, it was just top, really.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to come around and find out from each of you who you thought was the best party campaign, the worst party campaign, the best leader campaign, and the worst leader campaign. Just while you're thinking of your answers, here's some comments. Ujay Town says, Winnie certainly reflects my grumpiness. Andrea says, agree, bias towards the Greens and the Māori Party on One News Saturday was very obvious. Now, Scott and, Brent says, hey, Scotty, good to see you listening. Brent, could you speak to your friends on the phone or something, not through my YouTube account? Craig says, the All Blacks won because the left lost. Yeah, somebody said that. You know, the government changed and immediately the All Blacks improved. Brent says, moreover, the Greens thought they won. They did. I mean, you heard their speeches. It was like they'd won the US presidency. They were interesting. Cherie says mainstream media are trying to cancel New Zealand First and silence those that support it, mostly older conservative New Zealanders. New Zealand Kiwi says Winston is a need and a must for all New Zealanders. Gabrielle says, send in the clowns. If this is the moral compass and intellectual think tank for Aotearoa New Zealand, we are certainly in big trouble, a pack of disconnected dinosaurs. That's referring to you guys, by the way. And Rex says Brendan is looking very sharp, the same tailor as Winston. Is it?
Thank you, Rex. Thank you for noticing. No, it's not the same. So unless he's shopping at my Jewish German tailor Hellenstein, then I don't think so.
Okay. Right, we're going to do this quick, guys, because I want to get on to the next topic about the minor parties. So firstly, we're going to go around the group. Best party campaign and the worst party campaign. Christine, I'm going to start with you. Best party?
Oh, National, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
and Labor was the worst. Labor
worst. Okay, and you're allowed to pick parties that didn't get into Parliament as well, like TOP or other minor parties. Brendan, best party campaign?
I actually think National overall, of course, but I think actually New Zealand First, and the results showed that. They were very canny. And I also think that I have to say that the work I saw, the actual campaign promo work that I saw from the New Conservatives this time, there was some rebranding there, and there was some good messaging. It's a shame it didn't cut through, but I thought that was quite good.
Okay, Sue, best party campaign and worst?
Well, there wasn't a real stand-up best campaign, but definitely Labor was the worst, and that's negativity. And that TV ads irritated me, just, and also the Greens didn't get out and they didn't leave their homes to travel. You have to take your hat off to Winston. He was in every town. So was Alfred Nuttu. He just zipped around the nation like I don't know what. So they were out into towns that probably hadn't seen an MP in quite a few years, who had a message for them. No one really stood out for the best, but there were a few standouts for the worst.
Okay, Michael?
Oh, yeah, look, I thought Winston was pretty good. And I agree.
Hold on,
with
we're
what
doing
Sue
parties, not leaders yet. Leaders is next.
Yeah,
Come on, keep the rules.
Well, New Zealand first. Yeah, New Zealand first.
Are you saying Winston is New Zealand first?
Well, his critics call him Winston first.
Yeah.
But look, no, the New Zealand First campaign was, and just what Sue said there, really, Winston was out and about. Shane Jones actually made some really good speeches, I thought, towards the end of the campaign. He was really saying some things that resonated. I agree with the others. I think Labor's didn't have a record to defend, and it was deplorable and very nasty, really, especially as things wore on. Yeah.
Okay, and Bruce, best party, worst party campaign?
Well, the best party campaign, I think it started off with National hitting the ground running, but they seemed to sort of peter out a bit, and then Winston took over. I think his political nous, he understood what was going on, and he slipped into the opportunity, and he took over from National, I think, as leading the pack. He's a conservative heart, and I was kindly disposed towards him, I suppose. And I suspect he might have been reading Thomas Sowell.
Right. Okay. And worst? Did you say worst? You did say worst, eh?
No, I haven't said worst. The worst was Labour. In it for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Was a ridiculous, ambiguous motto, and they were in it. That was the problem. And
they put us in it, Bruce.
Pardon?
I was just saying they put
the
us
campaign
in it.
was negative, critical. And anyway, the Labor Party it's become a party of identity politics, and it's lost its identity, so it's going to be confused about itself, which it is.
Okay, best party I thought were the ones that were on the ground that did have a lot of big crowds turning up, and some of those were the minor parties. New Zealand Loyal had a lot of people turning up to their meetings and a lot online. New Zealand were present right around the country. Freedom's NZ, they had a lot of groundwork, big crowds around the place. Even if you weren't supporting them or voting for them, they had big crowds, and Winston was constantly posting photos of big meetings that he was holding. And Christopher Luxon as well. You didn't see a lot of big meetings with Chris Hipkins. Worst party campaign, of course, I think was ACT, because they lost their mojo halfway through and petered out, and it showed. So let's go around just quickly. Best leader in the election campaign and the worst leader. Christine?
Overall, Chris Luxon, and the worst was Chippy.
Hipkins, okay. Brendan?
Best leader, I think, for me is Winston again, and it's the votes and where he took that party from and to, and very skillfully navigated that, came in, swooped in, seagulled in at just the right time. Worst was David Seymour. He's the one guy who is solely responsible for cutting his own party off at the knees after what was actually a very effective advertising campaign that all of a sudden got cut off at the knees.
Yeah. Sue?
Luxon in the debates because he sort of remained calm in a chaotic atmosphere. And, of course, you can't take it away from Winston. He positioned himself into play.
Right. And worst?
Chris Hipkins. I've forgotten about him already.
Okay. Michael?
I thought actually Alfred Naro was really good. I heard an extended interview with him, and he was just so impressive. It was a bit unfortunate, really, that he formed New Zealand so late. But I think he's one to watch in the future because he's got an ability to get people around him and build a good team. And it was unfortunate that he was perhaps too little, too late. I thought he was really good. Labour was terrible. I did not like the Greens or Te Pāti Māori. I thought the things that they said were just quite bizarre and divisive. And anyone who didn't agree with them was racist. So, I found listening to them genuine debate and counterpoints were impossible, actually. So I found that very irritating.
Okay. And Bruce?
Well, best leader, I think, has to be Winston, and he spoke directly and boldly to his constituents. And as I've already said, his grumpiness was worked out and came over in his favour. The worst leader, I think, was David Seymour. He very nearly stole defeat out of victory, out of the jaws of victory. His vindictive criticism of Winston was unnecessary. He was a Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll figure, and I'm not sure which was which. It was hard to tell. And I must say, in the context of all of this, poor Christopher, he was handed a hospital pass by Jacinda.
Hipkins? Yeah.
And that's it. And he couldn't do much. He was lumbered from the beginning. Although I must say that that'll do. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Final topic. Where to now for the minor parties? Now, let's just quickly have a look at the results. So minor parties, apart from top, New Zealand Loyal 1.1, New Zealand 0.6, Freedom's NZ 0.3, Democracy NZ 0.2, New Conservatives 0.1, Leighton Baker 0.1, and New Nation Party Point one. Here was an email that I got, team, to share thoughts with the panel. Your panel, in our opinion, were part of the negative narrative concerning the smaller political parties, i.e. a vote for a small party was a wasted vote. You have thousands of viewers across New Zealand who watch Straight Talk, so it carries influence more than you realise, I believe. It surprised me that you did not have a more balanced approach with your panel. The panel was stacked all of one accord. No discussion at all around what a righteous vote might look like. Brendan, I'm going to come to you first because I think if I remember rightly, you were actually pushing very strongly for people to vote on a principled basis and being able to go to sleep at night, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd have to say too, a couple of things there. Number one is, personally, I voted, both of my votes went to two different minor parties, and one of them, particularly my local candidate vote, I had no other option, and I voted for someone who didn't even come close. But it was purely a principled moral vote, conscience first, right? Secondly, I did the numbers, and I think realistically, if you want to get 5% in this election, I think you needed to secure somewhere in the vicinity of about 130 to 145,000 votes. That's a lot of votes. That now we're doing pretty good here, I think, on Straight Talk, but I don't know if we're that impressive in our audience reach just yet. So I think there's a lot more going on here, and it's not really as simple as some people maybe think it is. You've got to work and have a big machine that's very focused behind you to achieve that.
Okay, before I come to Christine and Sue, who have both campaigned for minor parties, Bruce, what's your thoughts?
Well, I didn't vote for a minor party. I was tempted to vote for one, but I didn't. And I think if a minor party is going to get off the ground in the present situation we're in, it needs a champion who captures the attention of the potential constituents. And that's what New Zealand First had, although it's strictly speaking not a minor party, but it did well because it had a champion. And I can't think of one historical movement that has begun without a champion, actually.
No.
So you've got to be well known. And just one little thing I'd put in there too. I suspect that although Alfred Nara's New Zeal was a late starter, it did better than most of in the other minor parties because Alfred was already had a national profile, and that helped.
Yeah, that's one fact, is that no new party has got into Parliament under MMP since it came in 1996 without either an existing MP or a past MP. So there's some phenomenon there that is interesting to see. Right, Christine, you have done a campaign for a minor party. What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's ridiculous to say that we as a group are stacked in any particular direction. I mean, we believe what we believe, and you get the honest reaction of the people that sit on this panel, and if you don't like it, well, it just happens to be the way that it is. And I could give you a few names from journalists around the country if you want a woke panel for next time, Bob. But I think it's been an honest reaction from the panelists. I mean, the reality is, and Brendan voted with his conscience, and I think if that's what you want to do, that's wonderful. But the smaller parties have got to come to the realisation that they need to find a commonality and become much bigger parties. A lot of them actually could become part of New Zealand First because it's the only one with conservative views that is willing to really fight for them and already has a place in the scheme of things. But they all want to be the leader and they all want to have their different paths, and I don't believe it's going to go anywhere for a long time. I think I said earlier tonight that people need to go and talk to Colin Craig. He did a damn good job for a long time. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, and it does take a leader. And that leader can be quirky or unusual. It's got to be something that makes that leader stand out, and the party's got to have the right policies to back it. It doesn't just happen because you're obsessed about something. And a lot of them have one issue that they're really crazy about. I think Alfred has great potential, but next campaign needs to start tomorrow. He can't wait and leave it till the end. You know, he started pretty late in the campaign. He's the only one, I believe, with any real hope.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see just how difficult it is to get above that 5%. I mean, even with all the media chatter and all the attacks on New Zealand First, they only just got to 6.4. It is really hard to get to that 5%. Sue, you've been involved in campaigns. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, we're not stacked on this panel. Actually, a lot of our friends are in all those different minor parties, and they're greatly valued and treasured people that we all know very well. So what we were discussing was reality. We weren't negative. It was realistic. That and in my history of campaigning, like Christine, a lot of years, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep saying that we're the one who are the vote for to be the righteous vote. No one party has the righteous vote, because what do you say then about the MPs that are in national or other parties that are now in Parliament? After every election, we're berated for not voting for those small parties. Well, it's reality. The reality, and now they have to come together. They have to. Someone like Alfred Nuttu is a great negotiator and get all those people on board. Everyone now has to come together. We can no longer have the luxury, especially in this environment where the principles we stand for are no longer wanted nor valued by our media or our policymakers at this stage. So we need wisdom, and we need to really be quite hard in our messaging to these parties now. They have to come together. So I started out with the Kiwi Party, right back, that little party. It was a grassroots movement which morphed into Conservatives, which then became New Conservatives. So there's a longevity there. But we had people on the ground. We had a network, and a lot of people working very, very hard. And that is when you're disappointed, when things happen like what happened with Colin Craig, that's disappointing, and it fractures, and it has resonated right out across those networks that we'd built. So now, okay, there was a lot of hurt people. There's a lot of fracturing. There's a lot of things that had to rebuild. And then all of a sudden we didn't have just New Conservative or Conservatives in the picture. We had a lot of little parties saying we are now the answer, or the answer if you're in Kiwi. So now we have to build together, and you need a good negotiator. It can't be one person. You've got to put your pride aside, your ambitions, be humble and come together. If we really want to be represented in our social conservative principles and values, that all has to go to side. We cannot protect our patches. We have to come together with those grassroots, the energy from those grassroots people giving their own hard-earned money. You cannot take that for granted, and you've got to build. And like, it was said, your campaign starts from today, and you've got to, we cannot keep doing what we're doing. So, so that's my take on it. It's a hard message, but now you have to come together.
Okay, you got the final word, Michael.
Oh, well, thank you, Bob. Yeah, look, a good conscience is a soft pillow. And people that vote according to principle, I don't think we as a panel were dismissing minor parties or the leaders. But in politics, you have to marry principle with pragmatism. This is what we were saying all the way through. And exactly what you said there, Sue. These parties, they're high-minded, they've got strong-headed leaders, they're good people. They are really good people. They are saying things that the panel and many of the people that watch this program would totally agree with. But you've got to read the system. And if you don't do that, you will continue to be, as Churchill said once of the Nazi menace, we're a voice in the wilderness. And we can't afford to do that. I believe that somebody somewhere has to mobilise and galvanise a conservative voice in this nation and draw us together and be that visionary voice that can bring real change. I'm not confident that National will enact policies that we would like, really, in the social and moral area. But we need to keep praying, and we need to keep working with people who understand the system and marry that with their principles and let's get some real change, some real action, for the future.
Okay, I should have just mentioned that Sri Trotter was going to be on with us tonight, but she's part of a pōwhiri for the Jewish community, which is happening tonight. So that was the reason she's not with us. And Dr. Ate Moala was also going to be on, but she is caring for her mother. So that was a more important family first. So team, that is our final program for this series for this year. We do intend to be back next year, and I will be doing some phone calls with these panelists to check to see that they're part of that. But panelists, thank you for being a part of it. Bruce, you actually get the Got Nothing Better to Do award because you have been on every episode except for 2. So that is pretty impressive. You really need to get a social life. Are you still there, Bruce?
No, I'm out with my social life.
That's lucky. And Christine, apart from a few council meetings, you were just behind. So that was an impressive performance as well. But we did have a whole lot of panelists. There's about 10 in total who have done a fantastic job. So as I said, final one for this year, but we intend to be back because the audience seems to have loved it. We've really appreciated being part of everybody's Monday night. And we will let you know when we are back. But until then, have a great week. Thanks, panel, and thank you, viewers.
Bye.